And you've been tracking down these witnesses as they go in and out of the courthouse. Matt, let's talk about Colby Ryan on the stand. What are you hearing so far?
Julia, nice to see you. And wow, when you think that there's going to be another twist or turn or surprise in this case, we had one today. It's a big day for testimony, and Vallow Daybell, a.k.a. the Doomsday Cult Mom, wiping away tears as she sits across in that courtroom from the jury, dabbing her eyes as her son, Colby Ryan, is on the stand, talking about how he thought that she was a good mother at one point in time, protecting him and protecting Tylee, who she is on trial for murdering. He testified about learning about Charles Vallow's death, his stepfather of 15 years, how he loved him. He told the jury his mom called him to tell him about his stepfather's death, and this is a paraphrased quote. He said this: "Lori told me that he had died from a heart attack. When I opened the door after he went to her apartment, Tylee answered the door and gave me a big hug." Now, his uncle, Alex Cox, was sitting on the couch at Lori's apartment. He had a bandage on his head, and he would later find out that his uncle had shot and killed his stepfather, which is now considered a murder. Lori was talking about being out of money at that point in time and how she thought that she was the beneficiary to his $1 million life insurance policy.
Matt, when you're saying that she's wiping tears, am I correct in thinking that's the first time you've seen emotion like that from her 2 weeks now into this trial?
Right, emotion that's not involving laughing or snickering at some of the witnesses, her former friends like Melanie Gibb when she left the courtroom, or just kind of cocking her head and just crossing her arms when she hears things that she doesn't like. This is the first emotion that we've seen from her, including when the detectives were on the stand during that tough testimony that she didn't want to hear about when they found her children dead and the remains and the condition of those bodies.
Wow, perhaps that's the reason she didn't want to be in the courtroom today. Let's also talk about her sister-in-law, who was on the stand not only last week, but also this morning on cross-examination. And I understand you were there when she was leaving the courthouse.
I was, and Zulema Pestenes, she was part of the inner circle. She was part of that casting circle. She, too, was called a goddess by Chad and Lori and followed their beliefs into thinking that people were either light or dark spirits and that somehow demons would take over a body and they needed to be cast out. She said this on the stand today, a paraphrased quote, about thinking that now that Chad and Lori, in hindsight, that they were working and their intentions were evil. She was asked, did Chad or Lori ever tell you to hurt anyone spiritually? She said, no, we were doing something good to help get rid of darkness and evil spirits somewhere. But now I believe that their intentions were different and very evil. Much of her testimony centered around her late husband, Lori's brother, Alex Cox, who died after he learned that Tammy Daybell's remains were being exhumed, and he told her at the time that he thought that he was going to be the fall guy. It's one of the questions that I wanted to ask her about as she left this Ada County courthouse. Court TV was the only one there for her exit. Take a listen. What do you think about your testimony today? Was it hard to face Lori? Do you think that Alex is the fall guy for Lori and Chad? Are you planning on testifying against Chad Daybell as well? Not answering any of our questions, and you know what? She may have to testify again for Chad Daybell's trial. That date has yet to be determined, but before her testimony last week, this was day 2 of her testimony, there was a lot of back and forth with the attorneys as to whether or not she had proper representation here in Idaho, because her representation's from another state in Arizona, because they were thinking that at some point she may have wanted to take the fifth, plead the fifth.
Wow, she did not do that and is an important witness inside of that courtroom. Matt Johnson asking the tough questions. Thank you so much for all of that insight. Daryl Cohen's still with us. Let me ask you about Colby Ryan on the stand. I wonder if that's the reason that Vallow Daybell through her attorney, asked the judge if she could not be there for the testimony. And perhaps she would have wanted to not be there for this. It seems that Colby Ryan, her oldest son, her firstborn, is something of an Achilles heel for her.
She is now, after all this time, facing reality. And this is up close and personal, eyeball to eyeball, face to face. She finally cried. I suspect these were the first bits of emotion that were real. She doesn't want to hear what she has become. She doesn't want to hear what they see she became. Not the same mom that she had been. She has now become Lori Prison Bell rather than Daybell.
And she, in listening to this testimony, is also hearing a different version of herself through Colby Ryan's testimony. Part of what was asked on cross-examination by her attorney is, did your mother teach you about casting out evil spirits? Did she teach you about dark scales and light scales and this idea that there were people who were taken over by zombies? And he said, no. She didn't teach me any of that. I never learned any of that from her. So you almost see this shift. Do you think the defense wants to lean into that? And actually, I want to read a little bit more from what was said today in court on cross-examination of Zulema Pastenes when she was asked about the things that were being taught by Chad and Lori. The defense attorney on cross asked her, this entity, Garrett, that left Charles Vallow, that was a successful casting? And she replied, according to them, Chad and Lori, yes, it was successful. He asked, what about court according to you? And she responded that I didn't know whether it was done correctly or effectively or if we had cast it out. It was a very hard demon. I only had faith that Chad and Lori were telling us the truth. And here's how the defense ended their cross-examination of Pastenes. They asked her to recall or talk about a time when she had an experience in temple where a heavenly being showed up and that she saw the Heavenly Father, Lori, and Jesus, but doesn't really know what happened after that. She didn't answer that question. There was a long pause, and then the attorney withdrew his question and sat down. This was very real for the people who were inside of this group.
Just think how that resonated to the jury. Think about what they heard, which was nothing. Think about what they saw, which was everything. Think about the witness. Think about Lori. Think about all of it. And this was a major impactful moment for that jury, which means it's a major impactful moment for the prosecution. Nothing positive for the defense.
Even though the defense is the one that asked the question, do you think they're leaning in too hard to the religious beliefs side of it? It seems that they're not shying away from how strange this was. They want to, the stranger, the better. They seem to want to bring out in front of this jury.
Well, they're trying to show that she was a good person, and then she was under his influence, and because of how charismatic he was, she became addicted to his philosophy. She became a cult member. It's not her, and so therefore they're trying to show, and that's all they have, by the way. They don't have a lot. So you got to take what you have and try to expand it and use it. That's all they can do. They don't have anything else.
Colby Ryan is still on the stand now. He's on redirect examination. And just imagining what the emotions must be for him to have to be inside of that courtroom. There was a jail call that he made to his mother. He's really trying to get her to admit to what happened. And she tells him they'll be reunited with Tylee Ryan and with JJ Vallow. She says they're in a good place, that she didn't have anything to do with it. She still won't admit it, even though he's confronting her with it. I mean, he's the one that survived. She didn't come after him. She didn't send Alex Cox after him, be it he wasn't living there in their close circle, but that's got to be tough.
Cannot even imagine, I cannot imagine being him on the stand testifying against his mom by telling the truth. I cannot even imagine how a child, regardless of his age, or in another case her age, but his age, having to testify against the person who brought you into this world, against the person who raised you apparently with good values, but then she changed.
And that change is something that could help the defense, possibly, in this case, but how successful will it be? We will see.